Welcome back to Sustainable Culinary Solutions with Ali Gonzalez. Today, we want to talk about small businesses and small restaurants. Normally, we can have CEOs on this channel and discuss um, the ins and outs of owning a small business or a restaurant or franchises. But unfortunately, I don't feel that they have the experience or knowledge all the time where they get their hands in deep and dirty and they don't know, they're usually running it from a banking point of view and they have tons of support. Um, I want to talk about all the small businesses right now because we have a real big issue across the United States. New York, Chicago, Florida, Los Angeles, San Francisco, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of small businesses in the last couple of years shutting down. In fact, thousands. And right now, as of December, you looked at downtown Manhattan, where there was about 22 small business restaurants closing down. Every time I look online and see in the news, another small restaurant is closing. Some of them have been open for 30 or 40 years, and they're still shutting down. So today, I have with me um, a person I call a friend, somebody who I met over, I would say, 12, 15 years ago in the industry. Her name is Gwyn Artz. We met in the industry, and I have a deep respect for her. And, you know, uh, she moved, I met her in San Diego, and she moved from San Diego all the way to Kentucky. And we're going to talk a little bit about her story. And then we're going to also discuss what's happening right now and why is it happening and what can we do to better ourselves. And one thing I like to say about the small businesses out there, we never fail. We learn and we grow. The only small businesses that fail are the ones that don't care and don't try and don't work hard at it. But sometimes it's out of our control. Either we don't have the support, we don't have the money, or the economy changes and there's nothing we can do about it. So, Gwyn, welcome, and it's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in 3 or 4 months.
I know.
So tell us a little about yourself and tell us about, why you moved to Kentucky. How long have you been in the industry? What have you done? And start off about your small restaurant that you started and the pros and cons about starting it. What would you do differently and your entire experience?
Oh, okay. Well, I like to cook. I like to eat, and I've always been that way ever since I was a kid. Even writing a menu for my parents at 12 years old, uh, serving breakfast. So, cooking kind of been in my family. We went out to dinner quite a bit, and we were friends with all the restaurant owners. And my parents were just too tired to cook. And it was one time we were all together as a family, so it kind of just made sense to me in my head, that that's what I 18 when I was 18 years old, I got a job as a prep cook at the Ojai Valley. Really nice 4-star for me as a new kid, not knowing anything about cooking, and it was really nice they let me in and showed me around. But now I've been cooking for probably around 27, 30 years, maybe even more. So, uh, personal chef wise, uh, private chef, pastry chef, line cook, sous chef, um, food service director, back to personal chef, and then the only one thing I didn't do yet was open a restaurant. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
So basically, you've seen the good and bad in the industry, and I never always optimistic, as I say, and I try to look at the brighter side of everything, and we learn. And the places that I hated the most, that were the most troublesome and had the worst employees, that's where I learned the most. So I always take it above here and look at it as a positive way because I learn what I don't want to do and what I don't want to experience in the future and what changes I would make in those situations again. So I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh, absolutely. I made all the mistakes. The you learn that maybe if you're um 3% of the restaurants that open will stay open. So I knew what I was getting into. At the beginning, I knew my chances were very slim, but I couldn't help myself. It was like jumping off a cliff. I was going to do it anyway. And I gave myself a time limit of 2 years. And so it took me about 3 to 4 months to set it up. and launch and hire. And I felt like uh, I, as a chef, I can cook, but an HR director, it was a little bit more difficult. And you know, filing all the W-2s and doing the human resource aspect was taking a lot longer for me than the in the kitchen or the front of the house. So
And the
that,
funny thing is nowadays it's 80% HR now than running the restaurant. And back in the old days, if you look at the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, there was no such thing as HR. If they came around, it was rare. They had a district manager or a VP helping out with that aspect, and they just would note things or jot it or talk to somebody. But it wasn't where there was lawsuits every day and threats. And the newer generation, I say, they know the law better than what we do, and the laws have gotten stricter, especially around California and a lot of these other states. And they're all adapting to California's laws, by the way. But the hardships are the turnover, the job descriptions, the timekeeping. I mean, it's very, very strict out there, and they know it, and they know how to get around it. And as I always say, it's the same people that are going from job to job that knows these laws, and they will sue. I
yes.
mean, almost if they're not suing, they're just going there for a couple of weeks so they can collect unemployment, or they can collect disability, and you have to be very careful with that. So, when you opened your restaurant, what were the hardships? I mean, go ahead and tell the ugly truth. I mean, if you had employees on drugs and they were stealing, I mean, I think my listeners also want to find out about, they probably have a lot of things in common with you, or if they want to open a restaurant, they need to know the ugly truth, and what did you do to get yourself out of those situations?
Well, I went in there thinking I could run the restaurant, um, not by at least find a good manager to help me run the restaurant. And it was difficult to find that person and keep them because several managers are very talented, and to pay them what you need to pay, you've got to compete with a lot of the distilleries, at least in Kentucky. And the distilleries at that time were paying very, very well. So plus you got to compete with the factories as far as workforce. We didn't have a college close, so the hiring of educated, good kids was very difficult. And because the volume wasn't as high, um, the demographics of the town were very, it was about 14,000 people in the town, but we had a pretty good traffic count because we had people coming and going from county to county or big city to big city. So I thought, well, maybe we can direct them to the restaurant, either from the distilleries or from in the midst of commuting. So there was lots of thoughts that I had. There was no place to get happy hour. There wasn't any farm to table foods. We were in the middle of farm country. A lot of farmers had a lot of food to sell, and nobody was cooking in any of the restaurants around. So I thought, well, let's give that a try. It just ended up being where um I wasn't able I didn't maybe want to work as hard physically and mentally as what the restaurant required.
And I do have to admit, when I seen you in October and I was working with you for those few days, your local farmer that came in and brought that produce, it was amazing. I mean, I've seen local farm produce as I go to many states, but that stuff was truly amazing. The tomatoes, the carrots, everything he brought in. Like I said, I want to go work with the guy for free for about a month or two, just to learn from him, and I mean, because that's an art itself. So people don't understand. And the other piece about your business that I want to bring up before you go on is that you are making things like most restaurants do. Like we just take the cheese sticks or buffalo wings out of the freezer and just drop them in the deep fryer, and have things that are prepared. You were making everything from scratch. You had freshness, quality, and consistency, and that even makes it that much more harder because you're putting it at a level up here. So please go on. I'm sorry.
If I would have done the frozen to fryer model, I think that the town would probably have supported me, but because it was strange it was this strange girl from California coming into a small town and trying to, sell the food that they're growing. It's happen. People, the ones that had the money to spend on nice restaurants would go to Louisville or Lexington. That was just the culture. So I not only messed up on several of the things through the restaurant, but their culture in that town was to, after work, after you get off work at the factory or wherever the you go home, you take your 6 pack garage and you watch the game. And that's what they did as their happy hour. Where I was thinking, well, they'll stop by, have a cocktail, because most restaurants make all their money on the alcohol or drinks anyway. So, but that the culture was kind of where I messed up too, within that small town, because it hadn't been done before.
And that's what I always explain to many of these small business owners. I was meeting with a gentleman this week, and he wants to open up a coffee bar. And I always explain, go look at the culture. It's not about what you want or what you like. You have to do a radius. Okay, if it's open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, changes the culture. Are they willing to travel for breakfast and lunch anywhere from 2 to 3 miles, or 4 miles, or five? For dinner, maybe 10. But again, if you have a full Hispanic location, or a full Asian location, you're not going to try to sell pizza in certain areas. You're not going to try to sell Chinese food in certain areas or Mexican food in certain areas, because they're not going to buy it. It's not something they want, or it's not something they're accustomed to. And then there's a price point. If certain cultures feel that they can make it cheaper at home, why are they going to pay that price point? So culture is a big deal, and taking that drive, doing your market study. um, I mean, we all want to do what we love and what we're passionate about, but unfortunately nowadays it doesn't really pan out, and we really have to hire somebody to do some of that work for us. Because again, the other thing is about a business owner, they're trying to do it all themselves, or they get a partner and the partner's not on the same page. That partner probably doesn't have a food background or something. But most likely, most small business owners, they're doing it on their own, and there's way too much work. There's extremely a lot of work. And if you're not a banker, and you only know food, okay, that's fine. You can do great with the food, but then you have to do the HR side and the accounting side, and there's a balance to it. So it doesn't hurt to always hire someone to help you get started, so that you're not wasting money. So everyone says, no, I don't can't afford it, can't afford it. Well, in the end, you're spending $100,000, $200,000 more than what you should have, and you
Hmm.
could have hired somebody for $20,000 and got it all done in half the time.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, please go on.
Yeah. Go big or go home. Really.
Yeah, yes.
Uh, the I kind of the good thing was that I knew the stats on restaurant survival, so I gave myself 2 years. I wasn't trying to be a dead dog at the end of the 2 years. I figured, you know what, it's not going to work. Even if it was at full capacity, it would be too much work, and I probably would have the same staffing issues. So that's when I just said I just cut my losses and got out. And then, but the good news is I transitioned from um, the restaurant into catering. Everybody knew who I was. Everybody liked the food, so it was easier to switch to catering and then or personal chef, private chef situations, because the um the town was kind of it's about an hour away from the big city. So it made sense that if they were going to have a party, a small party, I would go to their house, and they've got these beautiful kitchens that, the oven hasn't even been like monitored to make sure that the temperature was right. Just brand new out of the box industrial kitchens. And I come in and I teach them how to use the equipment. I'll kind of suggest different cocktails that they could make for their party. Um, kind of filling in not only a but just kind of getting the end result at home like a restaurant would, uh, in the big city. So, and that I think with the restaurant price, staffing prices, food costs going up, the my own personal rate is really or compared to going to a nice restaurant, spending, thousands of dollars for 12 people to eat, and then having the markup on wine and alcohol plus tip. So if you cut the alcohol and the tip out, um, personal chef, private chef is the way to go. If you are far away from a large town or city.
In addition to that, is that if you hired a catering company, you're paying for, HR, staffing, and all the other incidentals. So that's why you are successful right now at that. And that's where I take my hat off to you, because you just didn't quit and give up and say, okay, I'm going to file bankruptcy, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go somewhere else and work for somebody. You wanted to still have your own personal business. You didn't quit.
Yeah,
You stuck it out, and right now, from your telling me, you're still paying your bills, and most people just quit, file bankruptcy, and just drop out and look for another easy way out. And you're doing pretty well. You have a beautiful home. You were smart enough when you built your home to make sure you had the space and time and area so that you can have a personal kitchen out of it, and it's a beautiful kitchen, by the way. And you're doing well. You have a bunch of great customers and clients every time I talk to you about them. You know the right people. For some reason, that little restaurant did well for you in a different way.
it did. It did. Um, the nice thing too about chef is that I may or may not be the best chef out there or the top chef, but I'm easy to work with. People feel safe with me in their home. I'm going to do what they say. I'm gonna, you
I
know,
like me. I like to push.
I can see it coming because I've just done it so often in someone's home, that I kind of let them direct, and then I kind of do my own thing on the sly if I can, or just to make it easier. Um,
They trust you. They do. They trust you, and it's that personal one-on-one, and that's what's great with, and that's why you're successful, because you're so easy to talk to. You listen, and whatever they say, you give it to them, and that is key. Unlike there's a lot of business owners, they don't care to listen to their employees, and that's why they get themselves into trouble. They don't learn the law. They think they know better. They feel that they're their owner. So that's the main reason why a lot of these small businesses also go under. They don't want to listen. Now, the other piece about being a small business owner, and making it easier for yourself, and what's changed over the years is that I remember, running a small restaurant back in the 90s, especially in San Francisco Bay Area. The vendors would come out to me, and they would bring the dairy, and they'd take it out of the box and stock it on the shelves. And then the dry goods guy, the big, grocery guy, I didn't have to sit there online or call it in and take inventory. They came in and say, "Hey, Ali, how are you doing?" And they would take inventory for me. What would you like? I go, "Okay, 2 cases of diced tomatoes and juice. I need some paprika, some salt, pepper." And they would write it. Say, "Okay, Ali, it would be there tomorrow." The fish guy, the meat guy, and I always separated it. Some people just consolidate it all. I just knew who to trust. They trusted me. They dropped by. The produce people dropped by. They gave you the rebates. You didn't have to worry about ordering. It was there. There was no shortages. You never had to worry about anything. It was a lot easier to run. So nowadays, even if you want to own a franchise, which I tell people, so the franchises are almost like a small business, but you have to understand why the big corporations make it out there and why the smaller businesses are failing. And it's not just because it's the business owner or the manager. It's because it's almost impossible financially to do it. So let's take, for example, you want to buy a franchise or even a small business, and you're by yourself. You're going to pay right now anywhere from 9 to 12 or even 14% on that interest rate for that loan. And the average place everyone thinks, again, a gentleman the other day was talking to me. He thought he was going to be able to get in for 200, 300, or 100,000. I'm like, no, just to build a small coffee bar is going to cost you a minimum, for construction, 350. Then you need 50,000 for opening inventory, and then another 100,000 or more just for 6 months to get there. I go, but on top of that, if you take a loan for an average franchise right now is running about 800,000 to a million two. You take a loan out, let's just say, they're not going to finance you unless you have $200,000 in your pocket. It's a big equity. But let's just say you take a loan out for $1 million at 12%. That's a 10-year loan. It's not like a 30-year mortgage on a home at 5%. Let's just say 10% on the average. That's double the percentage. and at $1 million, and not at 30 years, it's 10 years. So if you're paying $3,500, you're talking about ten to $12,000 a month without insurance and taxes and all the other fees that come in. So when you're a small business, the bills just keep rolling in, electricity. And as I remember, your electricity was huge. So that's just that getting started, in which people don't understand that these rich business owners, these corporations that buy franchises, they're buying three, four, five of them at a time. They're not using their own money. They just have the equity in their bank accounts. So the banks trust them. So basically, they get an interest rate for half the price, and they're buying in bulk because, to be realistic, to you, most of these franchises will tell you you're going to make anywhere from 20 to 28%. You're actually making 12 to 15% if lucky. And if it's $1.2 million a year, that's what the sales are. That's 200, 150, $100,000 a year. So if you're the only person, you're paying your salary. So there's no profit.
Right.
And there's a lot of, ins and outs to this business. So if you're by yourself, you're private, it's very difficult to make money. Okay, again, you don't make money and you don't finance your own business. That's what they say, that the wealthy don't spend a dime of their money, because they're also writing it off. Their car, their everything they're using when they go out to eat, they're charging it to the client. It's all tax write-offs. When they're buying equipment, it's capital. You're talking about capex. So again, a small business owner doesn't understand this. They're just going in there with their money, they're pulling out all their cash, and they're losing it.
If I would have in a hot dog cart, that
Exactly. There's less overhead.
yeah,
So now, what would you do differently if you do this again? And this is probably my
something
final question to you.
real simple. Trying to do too much. It was just, a hot dog, really, maybe a gourmet hot dog cart or hot dog stand, brick and mortar, possibly if you can get a good, rent and have two 20-gallon pots, something that you can keep going throughout the day. And something that I could run by myself in a pinch, because that is almost certainly going to happen, that you will be by yourself running the restaurant by yourself at some point, whether it's like Valentine's Day, or a super busy week. Chances are else is going to want to call in sick. So
And you're right. It's called keeping it simple, and that's where we're headed. See, over the years, most of these restaurant chains, the portion size were huge, and these menus with 20, 40, 50 different things on it. And they're realizing it's not sustainable, the inventories, and they're cutting them now. All these big restaurants are cutting them. But again, most of these restaurants have filed Chapter 11 or sold to another corporation two or three times right by now. But you see, China's ahead of us in the restaurant industry and with food over by 10 years. And when they do open things up, it's one or two items. So
yeah,
it's maybe just noodles, and it's just all the same ingredients with maybe one's vegetarian, one has chicken, one has seafood, and it's just a noodle bar. So they keep it simple, and that's how they're more successful, because they're going to feed three or four times more than what America's feeding, but they understand that concept and how to get them in and out and fast. And when I first ran a restaurant and a small business, we kept the menu really small. There was probably about 10 items on it, and if we had the time and the inventory, we could run specials. You can add
mhm,
that stuff on. So your inventory was kept short and small. You didn't have to have all these products in there. I didn't even have a freezer. We had this little hole in the wall, little two-door freezer where we could put ice cream and shrimp, and that was it.
mhm,
Because you knew what you were going to sell, you knew how to do freshness, and you had to make that turnaround right away with the inventory, and that's what helps your food cost. And that's where we're heading back. We
yeah,
have to head back that way, especially for small businesses to make it. Because other than that, guess what happens when you go to all these chain restaurants? Everything read on the appetizer menu, and mostly on even the entree menu. What is it? Fried, 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 fried. I'm looking for something healthy, and I was like, "There's everything on here is fried." But
yeah,
unfortunately, they have no choice, because there's no the labor costs are too high. Training, prep, it costs too much money now, especially we know the average is anywhere from 15 to $18, per hour, but it's if you're going to find somebody, you got to pay 25 or 30. And that's the problem. And that's where we're headed. And that's the reason why small businesses are cannot make it, and they're failing every day now. So my advice right now for the next 2 years, stay out of it. The economy, eggs, flour, grain, um, natural gas, and right now, I guess the president's trying to pass a bill to get rid of gas stoves and ovens, and that's going to create a problem if that does go through. But I doubt it, and if it did, it would be years. But again, electricity is higher. I mean, gas at home right now is 3 or 4 times the amount than what I normally pay. And if that's just my home bill, and my eyes are coming out of my head, imagine what a restaurant is going through right now. The labor costs, the taxes, the fees. It's impossible. It's not a sustainable practice or method right now to follow through.
Like when NOLA closed, says it's going to close. I mean, the table thing is very hard, especially if you're a brewist and a chef, and that's your goal. Not necessarily money, but just to prove a point. It's
Well, Gwen, thank you for coming on with me and on my channel. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
um keep it simple and do what you love to do.
Okay, Gwen. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.